Hello friends. Another lecture in accelerator and beam physics. Today we will be continuing on the same line which we developed last time. Last time, if you remember, we were talking about the movement of the particle perpendicular to its original direction of motion of the beam. So this is basically movement in the transverse direction. If you remember, we looked at Betatron and how within the Betatron there is an ideal path and the particles are confined to move near the ideal path somehow. And our aim today will be to develop in a proper formal manner how this can be achieved in a real accelerator, which is not a Betatron, that is in other accelerators. So let us have a look at this. Basically, we will be discussing broadly the topic of transverse beam dynamics. And we will be trying to basically develop the equations of motion in the transverse direction. Today we will be able to move only up to getting the equation of motion, and next time we will try to see its solution and its interpretation and so on. When we are developing these equations of motion, our starting point will be the Lorentz force equation, because we want to manipulate the charged particle using electric and magnetic field. In particular, we will be developing the formalism according to movement in a magnetic field. For an electric field, this can be extended. We will discuss how this happens. And before we actually implement the Lorentz force equation, we need to see what are the type of coordinates which we will consider, and accordingly in those coordinates we will write the equations of motion. So our primary consideration has to always be that there will be a design path or design trajectory within the accelerator, so called ideal path. In the context of accelerator physics, the term used for this ideal path is the nominal path or nominal trajectory. So every accelerator, when you are designing an accelerator, your intention is that all particles should follow a certain track. The nominal trajectory is like a railway track, which you have made inside the accelerator, imaginary railway track. So built inside the accelerator, which the particle is supposed to follow. So if you have many particles, it is like a bunch of vehicles. Once the railway track is there, they will keep on moving at or near it. You can imagine the situation like some movie like Sholay, where the Dakus are chasing the train. Train is the nominal trajectory and the Dakus are all particles. They are scattered, but they more or less follow one particular path only. That is what happens in an actual accelerator. And any real particle will be following some path which will be more or less dancing around this nominal path. It may not exactly follow the nominal path, but it will follow it closely enough. We have seen this in the specific case of Betatron last time. This is just a basic extension of that idea. So you have the ideal or nominal trajectory and you have the real trajectory. And we want to describe right now in our discussion how much the real trajectory deviates from the ideal trajectory, particularly in two dimensions, that is, apart from the direction of the nominal trajectory, towards left, right and towards up, down, let us say. Okay. So, if you try to define a particular coordinate system, then basically, if you take any point, let us say you take this point on the nominal trajectory, then basically what you want to define is a coordinate system which has one axis pointing along the instantaneous direction of the beam. So this axis will be here pointing this way, always tangential to the nominal trajectory. And two coordinates which are perpendicular to this. One is in the horizontal direction and the other is in the vertical direction. Usually a a simple way to name this, if you want to check up, one can call this the x-axis, the y-axis, and the z-axis. If one does that, then okay, you probably need to just a minute. One has to take care of right-handed coordinate system. So probably x, y, and z. This will work for x, this will work for y, and this will be the z-axis. You can see that this is in the right direction of a triplet which is right-handed. In the sense, x cross y should give you z and cyclically. If you do it some other way, you will get a minus sign, and then things will become complicated. This is correct. This is the x-axis and y-axis. X-axis pointing towards the right, y-axis pointing towards the up, and z-axis pointing out of the plane of the paper. This is exactly what we have, but a rotated version. X is this way, y is up, and z is in that direction. You can convince yourself about this if you are not immediately convinced by me. Later, you can convince yourself. And the motion in the direction of the nominal trajectory is not called s. It is not called z. It is denoted by a symbol called s. S is displacement. If you remember your school level, displacement used to be denoted by s. So s is displacement along the nominal trajectory. X is horizontal. So basically, x is the horizontal deviation from the nominal trajectory. Y is the vertical deviation from the nominal trajectory, and S is the coordinate along the nominal trajectory. These are the three coordinates which we will choose. Okay? We call them x, y, and z. Just x, y, and s, just as we have defined them here. Another thing which you will notice about this whole setup is that, let me use another color. If you take any section of the nominal trajectory, let us take this particular section, one can see that if you take a small enough section, it appears to be an arc of a circle. If you take a very long, obviously this whole curve does not appear to be the arc of a circle, but you can divide it up into one arc, straight line, another arc, and so on and so forth. So one can define locally at a given point in the accelerator, one can define a local bending radius for a particular section. Next section will have a different value of bending radius, and so on. So one can introduce the general concept of a bending radius which depends on the where you are along the accelerator. That is, it depends on the position along the nominal trajectory. Example, consider a square shaped accelerator with 4 straight sections, and at each corner there is a magnet which bends the beam by 90 degrees. So then at the corner the radius of curvature will be whatever is the bending radius of that magnet, and in the remaining part basically this is straight section, so r equal to infinity kind of, because it's a straight section, so the curvature is extremely large. So you have one value of r in the magnet, another value of r for the straight section, again one value of r for the magnet, and so on and so forth. You get the picture. So one can define something like a bending radius which is a function of the where you are along the accelerator kind of coordinate, which is the s coordinate. Okay. This is much more easier to understand if you keep a practical example of an accelerator in mind. Otherwise, theoretically it doesn't make sense. Why should r be a function of s and so on? But we just saw the example of what it means in real terms for the accelerator. Okay. So one can have a so-called bending radius at any given point, and one can have an actual trajectory which deviates significantly from the nominal trajectory, as you are seeing over here. This is the basic idea of what we wish to do. Now, we will try to do a small sub-derivation which we are going to need during the actual discussion, which is going to proceed as follows. You know that, just take this picture. You have a particular section of accelerator in which the nominal trajectory is bending through an angle of, let us call it theta. Okay. The nominal trajectory is bending through an angle theta with a radius of curvature r. So this particular distance is r. R is a constant within this region. This can always be done because if the curvature keeps changing, you can divide it into small segments, small angle theta, and to accordingly define R for that particular section only. Now, suppose the real path of the particle goes this way. For the time being, assuming it is almost parallel to the nominal trajectory, in the sense that you have taken a very small portion so that the deviation is not much. So that throughout this region, we are assuming this is more or less a constant distance between the nominal trajectory and the actual trajectory. The particle is supposed to go from here, but he is going from here. This is the basic idea. And if you look at the coordinate system, basically this is what you will call the distance x. If you look at the coordinate, you are saying that I have chosen this point on the nominal trajectory and I am going to measure where the particle is with respect to this particular point. So, the origin of the accelerator coordinates which we have chosen is the ideal position of that particular particle. Imagine like this, that as we already discussed, the nominal trajectory is like a train and the particles are like, let us say, motorcycles or cars which are following the train. So obviously at any given time, if you are on the train and you are watching the car, the only thing you will notice is how much closer away from the train the car is. And if it speeds up or slows down too much, of course you will notice, but if they are moving at the same speed, which we are assuming that they are, then basically all that you are worried about is the displacement close to or away from the train. That is exactly the logic with which this particular coordinate system is defined. So, in the coordinate system which we are using, the value of the s coordinate, displacement along the accelerator, is always with the value of s with respect to the actual particle is always 0. What you mean is, I will say that this is my origin. Whatever part of the train I am seeing now next to me is my origin. I only want to know how much distance I am away from that. Okay. In that context, this distance you can call it as x. Okay. And of course, the accelerator is also designed in such a way that the particle should be moving at a certain velocity. I mean, the idea is that if the accelerator is constructed in such a way that there is a, let us say, a RF cavity which is going to further accelerate the particle, you know that it has to reach there at a particular time, otherwise the RF phase will be opposite and instead of accelerating it will decelerate. So, you need to have a very good idea in your design at a given point of time where the particle is exactly and what speed it is moving with. Where the particle is supposed to be is along the nominal trajectory, and as a function of time it is supposed to be at various points. Therefore, what should be the ideal velocity when it is passing through this is also well defined. Okay. So, the velocity of the particle as it moves along the nominal trajectory you can call it s dot, that is the rate of change of s. Okay. I'll put it down in a moment, but just keep that in mind. And if the actual particle is moving with the same angular speed, then actual speed of the particle will be more, because if you are taking a curve, the guy who is on the inner side has to move slowly, outer side guy has to keep up with him, he has to move faster. That is exactly what will happen here. So the velocity of the practical particle, actual particle, will be greater than the nominal velocity which you expect the beam to have. Of course, if x is negative, if the particle is moving on the inside like it is doing here, then that particle has to correspondingly move little slower so that the nominal trajectory particle or the nominal trajectory is moving along that in a particular speed, the guy who is at lower radius can move more slowly, so that we will cover this distance. The angular distance is covered in the same amount of time. Okay. So, if you try to look at the direction of, let us call this particular point as A and this particular point as B. The initial point along the trajectory is called A and the final point is called B. You can see that at A, the direction of x hat will be in this direction. The unit vector in the x direction will be in this direction. Call it x a hat. And s hat will be in this direction. Call it s a. Unit vectors in the x direction and in the s direction. After moving through an angle theta, when you arrive at the point B, xb hat is in this direction and SB hat is in this direction. I hope this is very clear. I have just taken unit vector along the outward direction, which is x hat direction, and unit vector tangential to the path, which is the s hat direction. Continuously assuming that these two are parallel to each other, which is very much a reasonable assumption when the theta is small. Okay. Or if theta r is constant over the entire range of theta, either. Okay. If you look at these two guys, so you can try to plot xb hat here. This will be xb hat, and this will be sb hat. One can actually write down xb hat and sb hat as linear combinations of xa hat and sa hat. That is, the final values of these unit vectors, these ones, will be linear combinations of the initial values. You can see that because you can take a projection along these two axes and so on. If you try to do that, you will find that this angle is theta. This angle is theta, just as it is here. That is the angle by which the orientation is changing. And therefore, you will find that if you look carefully, xb hat is equal to xa hat cos theta plus sa hat sin theta, and sb hat, you will notice that sb has a negative x component and a positive s component. Okay. So sb hat will be minus xa hat sin theta, where obviously we have noticed that this angle is also theta. Just for your reference, this angle is also theta, because that is the amount by which SA whole thing is rotated by that much angle. Okay. Minus xa hat sin theta plus SA hat cos. We have got a relation between the initial direction of the unit vector and the final direction of the unit vector. Now, if theta is very, very small, then basically cos theta can be written as 1 and sin theta can be written as theta or delta theta if you wish. Okay. And so, if theta is very small, then you will get xb minus xa by taking this xa on the other side will be equal to sa hat times d theta, and sb hat minus this is sa hat, it will become 1. So you take it this side, sb hat minus sa hat will be minus xa hat into delta theta. We will be using this relation soon. That is why this derivation was done in a preliminary manner. This is one part. So I am just what to call it, marking this for our future reference. We may need this at a certain stage. Another thing, if you will notice about this whole thing, we know that the original velocity of the particle, let us call it v. Then we can write v upon s upon s dot, that is the velocity with which the particle is actually moving divided by the velocity with which it would have ideally moved, assuming that the reference point on the nominal trajectory and the actual particle they move at the same angular speed. Then by just comparing the angles, this will be just r plus x divided by r. Basically, you are saying that the time taken to complete this arc divided by time taken to complete this arc at a constant angular speed is nothing but the ratio of the length of arm from this center of curvature up to this point and up to this point. That is exactly what we have written down over here, which is nothing but, if you simplify this, it is just 1 plus x by r. We will be needing this as well at some stage. That is why this diagram and these diagrams which are built from this diagram help to bring out both of these points. And this diagram is just an expansion of this part of this diagram. That is why all these things are together on the board. Okay. We will be using quite a few of these things as we move along. So please bear with it, and I hope all of this is clear. Okay, these are just preliminaries. Now we will try to see what we need when we write down the Lorentz force equation. You know that Lorentz force equation is basically force is equal to charge into velocity cross product with the magnetic field, and force will be gamma m into acceleration. So acceleration is basically r double dot or r bar double dot, since it's a vector quantity, and velocity is r single dot, r bar dot, again a vector quantity. So our good starting point for us would be to start with r bar, find r bar dot, find r bar double dot, and then substitute all of them into the Lorentz force equation. That is the method or approach with which we will proceed. Okay. So, and in the process of doing that, we will need all of these things. That is why these things are put up as preliminaries. R bar will be nothing but x times x hat plus y times y hat plus s times s hat, where r bar means the position vector of a actual particle compared to the corresponding position along the nominal trajectory. Means x is the displacement from the nominal trajectory, y is the displacement in the vertical direction from the nominal trajectory, and s is actually supposed to be 0, but there could be a little, means the particle could be a little behind or ahead. So right now we will retain s. At a later stage, we will substitute s equal to 0. The reason we don't want to eliminate it immediately is because when we take time derivative, you also have s hat, and even if s is constant, s hat will change. Okay. So let us try to have a look at this now. What will be r bar dot? There are three terms in r bar, each consisting of two objects. One is the displacement, other is the unit vector. And therefore, if you use UV rule, then you will get 6 terms, which will obviously be the following: x dot times x hat plus x times x hat dot. Please note all the dots, otherwise it will get confusing what we are doing. And it would be helpful if you can write down simultaneously, so that it is on your own without referring the board, so that it will be clear to you what exactly we are doing. It's actually just a chain rule implementation, but good to have an idea. About what is going on. So you get 6 terms. What are the 6 terms? X dot x hat, x hat dot, y hat, y hat dot, s hat, and s hat dot. 6 of them. Out of this, while we were doing all these things, you will notice that the y hat vector nicely sat in this direction, the vertical direction continues to be. So actually all this happening in the horizontal plane, actually happening this way, like how an umpire does boundary. In that orientation it is happening. It is not affecting what is in the vertical direction. So vertical direction in this diagram is this way, and this whole thing is a oriented slice. Okay, and therefore the unit vector in the y direction does not change with time. Okay, the vertical remains the vertical. So when the beam bends, x hat was originally that way after it, sorry, s hat was originally after bending, s hat is that way. And x hat was originally this way, after some time it is this way. Y hat is always in this direction, that doesn't change. Okay. That part is 0. Then we will also put, as we discussed earlier, we can put this equal to 0 in the sense that if we say that the particle is actually at the correct position as far as the nominal trajectory is concerned, basically my car is aligned with the correct window of the train, then basically my front back displacement is 0. That is our claim when we will put this term also to be equal to 0. I am not putting it right now, but we will. Okay. What else can we do from here? You know that you can substitute the value of x hat dot, because we have this now. We said that we will simplify this as this will become 1. So you get xb minus xa, which is delta xb, delta x hat equal to s hat multiplied by delta theta. Therefore, x hat dot will be s hat multiplied by theta dot. That is what we will get. And theta dot in turn will be s dot divided by r. That is another thing which you gather from this diagram. Let me repeat all the arguments because, let me write it down. So from here, we can come with the variation in x hat is equal to s hat times the variation in theta. I am not going to make it more explicit than this. I think that is explicit enough. It's a small term from here. No? You just replace theta by delta theta. Sine of delta theta will be delta theta itself. Cos of delta theta will be 1. And then it's just a rearrangement. And similarly, the small change in s hat will be minus x hat times delta theta. If you divide both sides by delta t, you will get x hat dot is equal to s hat into theta dot, and s hat dot is minus x hat into theta dot. The only question remains what is theta dot. That is easily answered from here. It is the velocity divided by the distance. Velocity along the nominal path is s dot, and so theta dot will be s dot divided by r. So you end up getting x hat dot is equal to s dot by r times s hat, and s hat dot is minus s dot by r times x hat. By the way, another important way to look at it, you know that the average direction of s hat in this diagram is somewhere here, horizontal, and you can see that the x hat dot is also along the same direction. Especially as you make theta smaller and smaller, this becomes more and more true. Similarly, s hat dot will be in the downward direction, and the average x hat between xa and xb is in the upward direction. Again, it is having a minus sign and it's parallel. Just to convince yourself that there is not just a mathematical trick and physically correct, you can have a look at this diagram in this slide also. You can draw delta, take it separately, take SA and B separate, and only the average direction of XA and XB is somewhere here. You will find that SB minus SA, which is this vector, is having a minus sign and parallel to the X hat direction. Similarly, blah blah blah. You get the picture what I am talking. Okay. So with this kind of picture where we have used, okay, just for your reference, we have used theta dot is S dot by R, just to complete the narrative on the board. Okay. If we put this term equal to 0, namely we say that the particle has aligned up with its counterpart who is supposed to be on the nominal trajectory, or its reference point on the nominal trajectory is in the same horizontal plane, then you can say that S is equal to 0. I'll put it this way. It is 0 for a very different reason than this is. This guy doesn't change, that is why he is 0. That guy, after doing the differentiation, otherwise इधर ही 0 डालता था तो तुमको दूसरा कुछ मिलेगा. Okay, so it's 0 in a very different sense, just for your reference. And you will get x dot times, sorry, yes, x dot times x hat plus y dot times y hat plus s dot plus x s dot by r times s hat. Basically, x hat dot gets substituted as s dot by r s hat. There is already a term containing s hat. We just combine both of them and give it this kind of form. So basically, the velocity is the x velocity in the x direction plus y velocity in the y direction plus some velocity in the s hat direction. And if you look at this carefully, it is actually 1 plus x by r factor. So it is basically this velocity in the nominal direction. This actually is v which you are having there. You are having s dot into 1 plus x by r, it is nothing but v. So this is logically, it makes sense that there is some velocity it has in the x direction, some velocity it has in the y direction, and it has this particular velocity v in the nominal direction. Perfectly fair. Second derivative, if you take, again you will get multiple terms. From here you will get two terms, x double dot x hat plus x dot x hat dot plus y double dot y hat plus y dot y hat dot. As we did earlier, y hat dot is 0. Y hat dot is something which is 0. Done, finished. S is something you are neglecting. It's the difference. Okay. So y dot is 0, that is given. And what about this term? If you try to expand this term, you will find that there are three objects here, or two objects. You can do UV rule, and within U there is another UV here, X and S. Okay, so basically what you will get is plus S dot plus x dot s dot by r plus x s double dot by r s hat plus s dot plus x s dot by r s hat. This is taking the derivative of the bracket term and leaving the s hat as it is, and this is keeping the bracket term as it is and taking derivative of s hat term. And in this one there is a chain UV rule on this term. Basically, it is x s dot by r, so it will be x dot s dot by r plus x s double dot by r. R is treated as a constant because we have taken this over a very small angular range where r is virtually constant. Here. Okay. Here. Then. So the first term, as Kalpesh points out, it is S double. Okay. This is high. Now again we go through the circles of substituting x hat dot and s dot from here, and when we do that, we end up with the following these. What do you get? You have got, of course, x double dot, x hat, and s hat dot will also give you an x hat. So that will actually give you minus s dot square into 1 plus x by r, unless I am s dot square by r into 1 plus x by r. Unless I am mistaken, this is correct. Okay. Where you have substituted, you have taken s hat into 1 plus x by r common from here. That will multiplied by another s hat by r, and there is a minus. So all these things are taken into account, and you get this term times x hat. Plus the y hat term is simple. So y is actually a very patient and what you say, it is an innocent spectator. It doesn't participate anywhere. The motion in y remains separated, and it is only x and s which are all playing table tennis with each other with different terms. Because x hat dot goes to s hat and s hat dot goes to x hat. That is why you have all these terms. When you try to look at the s hat terms, you will find that x dot x hat dot will also give you a term which is basically, if you substitute x hat dot, we will get s dot by r times s hat, which will add with this x dot s dot by r times s hat. So basically you will get the third term as s double dot into 1 plus x by r plus twice x dot s dot by r. One x dot s dot by r is from here, the other is from x dot s dot by r when you substitute x hat. So there are two of those, and this whole thing multiplied by x. So the acceleration term basically tells you that there is an acceleration in the y direction, there is an acceleration in the x direction, which is actually the acceleration in the x direction plus something to do with s dot square by r. If you try to notice what this means, you will find that s dot is proportional to theta dot, which means that this is somewhere proportional to omega square. It is some kind of centrifugal kind of term, basically, what it actually means. Okay, and this is more complicated to interpret, and we won't need it because we are concerned with motion in x hat and y hat directions. So it turns out that we won't need to interpret this in any reasonable way until much later on in the course, if we ever need to. So right now let us not try to spend time interpreting this. The first term is simple enough. It is the actual acceleration on the actual path rather than on the nominal path. Second term is slightly more complicated, so we will not go into the interpretation of that. I hope the basic algebra is clear up to this point. Basically what we did was, we said the actual path deviates from the nominal path, and to describe this deviation we introduce a coordinate system. This is a co-moving coordinate system, and something which I probably omitted to mention. What do you mean by co-moving? The coordinate system moves along with the particles. So that is what we said, that train is moving along with the car. That's what we meant. It's a co-moving set of coordinates. And so every time, what does this coordinate system measure? How much away from nominal trajectory in x direction, how much away in y direction is my particle. So nominal trajectory is here, particle is here. With this much of x displacement, this much of y displacement. The front back displacement is not counted. That is what we meant when we put this thing equal to 0. Okay. So in this co-moving following set of coordinates, we first of all had a look at if there is a local curvature in the nominal trajectory. We are assuming all curvature happens in the horizontal plane. There is no vertical plane, vertical direction design of the nominal trajectory. The nominal trajectory is in one plane, and in that plane it bends, and that bending is described by a local bending radius. And when we try to analyze this in a slightly deeper fashion, we find that the unit vectors change in a particular manner. The horizontal displacement unit vector and the nominal unit vector. These two change in a particular manner. We also get a relationship between actual velocity and nominal velocity. If it was on the nominal trajectory, what would have been its velocity, and because it is not on the nominal trajectory, what is actually its current velocity? That one we have. Taking all these as inputs, if we define a position vector in this coordinate system, in this co-moving coordinate system, we have basically obtained expressions for the velocity and the acceleration. Now that we have got velocity and acceleration, our next step would be to substitute both these things in the Lorentz force equation and obtain separate equations of motion for how the particle behaves in the x direction and how it behaves in the y direction. That will complete our agenda for today. That is to obtain equations of motion for the particle in the two transverse direction. Apart from the nominal direction, in the perpendicular direction, how does it move? Okay. So we'll pause here. You can review this. If there is any thing which needs clarification, the whole thing is done in Willis' book. Small warning, in Willis' book, the kind of coordinates he defines are slightly different. He takes the y as the nominal and he says x and z are the transverse coordinates. So some of the signs plus or minus might differ from Willis' book. So please be a little careful about that. But otherwise, this is exactly as it is there in Willis' book. You can review this and then we will continue. Okay, let us continue. We'll try to keep this relation written down somewhere because we will be needing it at some stage. And we will need these two guys. So before rubbing this, I'll rub this, I'll write it here and then rub this, so that we have some amount of continuity. This is easy enough, we can write it down and any step. Just remember that this equation is there. So basically, what we are trying to say is the Lorentz force equation, which says that gamma m r bar double dot is q times r bar dot cross product with v bar. Right? We want to substitute r bar double dot and r bar dot over here. Before we do that, let us just have a clarity about what this term entails. Okay? When you are talking about v bar cross v bar, you will get a x coordinate, a y coordinate and a z coordinate of v cross because it's a vector. Right? Now, important input from accelerator side in this derivation, that all magnetic fields, we will only consider them either in the x or y direction. There is no magnetic field in the s direction. You can imagine the reason for this. Magnetic field in the s direction requires my magnetic poles to be here. So how am I going to pass the beam? That's the basic logic anyway. So, and it's a practical thing that all my magnetic field configurations in an accelerator setup is always magnetic fields in the perpendicular direction to the beam direction. It makes sense because V cross B will then be in plane. If you have B in the direction of V, then V cross B will anyway be 0. And if there V is having a small deviation to B, then things will become complicated because you will get helical motion when you pass through the magnetic field. So in any way, it doesn't seem to make sense to have B in the S direction. So B bar will only be Bx x hat plus By y hat. That's it. No Bs s hat component. So B, of course, we have seen that it has all three components. It has a x hat component, it has a y hat component, it has an s hat component. So if you write this down, B cross B, you will get three terms. One is the first term will be By Bs minus Vs By. There is no Bs, there is only By. So you will get minus Bs By x hat. Second term will be the y component, which will be Vs Bx minus Vx Bs. Again there is no Bs. So we will get only plus Vs Bx y hat. And the third term will contain both, because it will be an s hat term. It will contain Vx By minus By Bx Z. These are my x, y, z components of V cross B. I already know the components of V. Components of V, I have written them as Bx, By, and hence I will get this Bs multiplied by By as the right hand side for the x component, and this same Bs, the bracketed term, multiplied by Vx will be my y component of this V cross B term. Okay. So basically, you will get R bar double dot is equal to Q by gamma m R bar dot cross B bar. We can now write down separate equations for the components. So the x component of this equation will look like this: x double dot minus s dot square by r into 1 plus x by r is equal to Q by gamma m. Let me put this in a kind of, and let me please excuse the space constraint. Q by gamma m. R dot cross B, that is V cross B ka x component is with what we are trying to do. So there will be a minus sign here, and you will have s dot into 1 plus x by r, which is the Vs term multiplied by V. So you get x double dot minus s dot square by r into 1 plus x by r equal to minus Q by gamma m s dot 1 plus x by r times V1, which looks very horrible. Fine. The other one is slightly less horrible. Y double dot on the left hand side is equal to plus Q by gamma m s dot into 1 plus x by r times p. This is the basic thing. Okay. Now we will make our lives more interesting from this two equations. Okay. We will make our lives interesting in a variety of ways. So I am going to rub that now. We have used whatever we needed from there, and let us see how this thing unfolds. Very interesting. Lot of physics which we will discuss just now, but not just mathematics. of course, I mean, I don't know if you have heard me many times kind of cursing the mathematics half of physics and praising the experiment and thinking part, etc. But for a person who does so much cursing of the mathematics, I am a very firm believer in the mathematics. I feel that that is the only way you can get to explain what you want to explain. My point is always that mathematics is necessary, you have to go through it. But after going through the mathematics, you should not get stuck up or I did great maths. You didn't do great maths, you just use maths as a tool. And then what grade you did, you have to find out physically. That is always my point. So, mathematics has to be there, not going anywhere. Just for reference. Let us try to first figure out, like, दिमाग क्या लगाने का, करना क्या है यहाँ करने, ठीक है? First of all, if you look at this term, it has having Q, it has having gamma m. If you throw your mind back, there is another quantity which you know, famous guy who has gamma m. It is nothing but the momentum. Momentum is gamma m into V. Okay. So, what you can do is multiply and divide by V. Then you will get Q by P instead of Q by just gamma m. And you have Q by P and you will have B as well, then actually you will get somewhere. If you remember your rigidity formula from last time, QB by P can be expanded as a multipole in terms of 1 by R plus K times R plus half M times R square and things like that. Okay? So that is the direction which we are going to take. So I think a good way to do this is instead of messing this up, we leave some space here for writing the final, not final, but some kind of pre-final form of these equations. And we'll start doing the extra stuff from the bottom. So that after this we have some space here so that it will make sense. And the extra stuff we'll keep writing wherever we get space, like this. Okay? So, one of the things which we just now discussed, Q by gamma m, is basically Q by gamma mv times V. If you remember, there was a formula here for V. V is S dot into 1 plus x by R. It was V by x dot is equal to 1 plus x by R. That's the same thing, S dot taken on the other side. Okay. So this will be what? Gamma mv, you can write it as, it is the actual momentum of the particle, by the way. V we have used, not S dot. So it's not the nominal momentum, the actual momentum on the actual part which it is moving. It is obvious that the nominal guy has less velocity and the other guy has more velocity, then naturally momentum also of the other guy will be larger. This is that moment. Okay. Q by P into V. V ko we can write it as S dot into 1 plus x bar. So we have done two substitutions. We have made gamma mv as P and we have put V as S dot into 1 plus x bar. If you substitute all of this into the left hand side, right hand side of either of these, basically we will end up with, there was already a S dot into 1 plus x by R sitting there. So you will get S dot square into 1 plus x by R the whole square. Kind of seems to make your life more miserable, but let's see what happens. But you will get QB by P over here. Okay. So this implies that I am going to treat both these right hand side as the same. There is only a sign difference and the sign of the B is different. The component of B considered is different. For the time being, we will take it as a generic, we will keep it just B. And then when the time comes, we will substitute it in both of them. Okay. So this implies that the RHS is equal to क्या हो गया? QB by P multiplied by S dot square into 1 plus x by R the whole square. I am sincerely hoping I have not made any goof up with algebra. I am working without notes. I forgot them at home. done in my office. So I hope it doesn't end up wrong. Let's see. If it does end up wrong, then we'll see what to do. It won't. Right. Having done this, there is another important piece of. I told you there will be a lot of physics. This is one piece of it, two pieces of physics actually. This is the discussion of the nominal trajectory we had in the beginning of the class. This is the formula for the momentum, and this is now in the form where you will try to use rigidity formula, but not yet. I'll tell you why not yet. Not yet because this is layer 1. I'm going to label it with a Roman numeral 1. This is layer 1 of things which you need to know in order to refine these equations. Okay. There is a layer 2 also. What is the layer 2? Is of a completely different type of consideration. First of all, let us consider the term 1 by p. Okay. 1 by p. Suppose there is a actual design momentum which the particle is supposed to have, and suppose this momentum doesn't match that momentum, or there is a spreading momentum around a kind of nominal type of momentum. Nominal momentum does not mean momentum on the nominal trajectory. It means what should be the ideal momentum at this particular displacement. Your particle may not have that. You may be little slow or you may be little fast. Okay. So I can expand this as 1 upon p, p naught plus delta p, let us call it. If you expand this as a Taylor series, it will become 1 upon p naught minus delta p upon p naught square. This is easy to see because it is 1 by x plus h. The first term will be 1 by x, second will be h into minus 1 by x square. That is exactly what you are doing. It's a simple Taylor series expansion. If delta p is small, you can terminate the Taylor series expansion right here, which gives you 1 by p naught into 1 minus delta p by p. This is just in the this is just to treat the system. If your momentum has actual spread, then this term will become useful for describing the system in a better way. Okay. And as it turns out, it will many things will cancel and it will stand as a standalone term in the equation of motion. So it makes sense to take the delta p out. This guy is going to give us lot of sleepless nights kind of, because there are multiple places where the delta p guy keeps cropping up. And this is a very real situation in an accelerator. It's not just because someone mathematically liked to do a Taylor series expansion that they did it. It's a very real situation that if a bunch of particles passes through an RF station, there is a natural spread of momenta which takes place. And this spread of momenta is going to be there throughout the accelerator all the time. And therefore it makes sense to write when you are making the basic formalism to take it into account. That is the idea here. So this is layer 2 as I said. Okay. Layer 1 kya tha? Layer 1 is trying to make sense of this Q by gamma m and trying to recast it till you have it in a format which is suitable for using your rigidity formula. That is 1. What is layer 2? Separate out any spreading momentum which is there and take only the ideal momentum of the particle as a main term, and the spread, this is also easy. So take the spreading momentum as a separate term. Okay. There is also a layer 3. I know you are getting like what is going on. But layer 3 is very simple. It is basically what you will do for the rigidity formula. So you have got QB by P naught. So QB by P can be written as QB by P naught into this term. So that we will do when we substitute here. But QB by P naught, if it is Bx, then my claim is that I will take the dipole term and the quadrupole term. If you remember your Taylor series expansion, Taylor series expansion of the magnetic field, we have got this. This is B with x component, not b times x. Okay, and we will say that, sorry, my bad, qby, we will take it this way, and qbx, we will simply take it as the idea behind this is that the magnetic field is, if you remember the diagram last time, you see the magnetic field is like this. It is north south, just for your reference. The magnetic field is like this. At that time, the displacement is like this. Displacement from the center. So when you have got x displacement, the magnetic field is actually in the y direction. And when you have got y displacement, magnetic field is actually in the x direction. That is why this dy is proportional to x and bx is proportional to. Okay. It comes from a practical consideration again. If you refer the same derivation in Edwards and Cypher's book, he actually gives a more mathematical explanation by saying that this will contain both x and y term, that will also contain both x and y term, but their coefficients will be very small. Ultimately, it comes to the same thing. What you are saying is basically, when I have x displacement, my magnetic field is in the y direction. When I have y displacement, my magnetic field is in the x direction. That is why qby by p naught is related to the quadrupole term in x, and qbx by p naught is related to the quadrupole term in y. This is the dipole term, and your assumption is that dipoles occur only with by. That is, bending magnets are always having field this way, which is something you already discussed. We said that all bending takes place in the horizontal plane. That means all bending magnetic fields, dipole magnetic fields, are all in the y direction. That is why there is no 1 by r in the expression for bx, only for by. By the way, we have still not proved, this comes in the tutorial, that 1 by r will be the dipole term, kx will be the quadrupole term, and so on, which we had discussed last time also. So that again you have to take it on faith basis till we actually mathematically prove it. If you are too over eager that I want to know what is this, the problem is done in Edwards and Cyphers, and Edwards and Cyphers, as you know, the solutions to the entire book problems are available on their website. It is maintained by Cyphers, so you can easily go and have a look. If you are so then I don't trust this kind of, go ahead. Okay. Anyway, we will be doing it as a tutorial problem, but that doesn't come until later, as far as our plan of the course goes. So layer 1, trying to recast q by gamma m times b into some form which is usable with rigidity formula. Layer 2, extracting out the spread in momentum part from the 1 by p, so that can be treated separately when the need arises. Third layer, actually expanding the rigidity formula with practical consideration. That is, all my magnetic dipoles are with by only. There is no bx magnetic dipole which will bend the beam. Then tomorrow everything goes for a toss, because you have to go back to the stage where you neglected y hat dot, or rather made it 0. Because if there is a dipole magnet which is going to bend the beam this way, then y hat dot, because initially like this, will now be like this. You bring back all the old algebra and do it again. We are not doing that because we have already established that this is a accelerator in one plane and stuff like that. But that is the justification for not having 1 by r here. If 1 by r is here, then a lot other complications arise in the whole derivative. I mean, rather have to be taken into account, because physically it means something which we have already said we are not considering. Physically 1 by r term in this expression means there are some bending magnets which bend the beam this way. Whereas we have said all bending magnets only bend the beam in the plane, out of plane is not there. Okay. Now with all this Ramayana, one can try to rewrite these equations into a more suitable form. Okay. So, if you look at this horrible thing, what will you get? X double dot minus S dot square by R into 1 plus X by R is equal to, now be careful, Q by gamma M multiplied by B and multiply divided by V will give you, let me write it this way, you will anyway get S dot square into 1 plus X by R. You will of course get this term. 1 S dot into 1 plus X by R is already there. A second one will come from here when you do this Q by P substitution. Okay. This also holds. Then you have 1 plus L1 minus delta P by P naught and you have one by R minus. This is all the Ramayana which we did here, substituted into the X equation. Let me repeat what we have done. There was already an S dot into 1 plus X by R. Now you wanted to make this Q by gamma M as Q by gamma M V. When you do that, you multiply and divide by V. But V is another factor of S dot into 1 plus X by R. There is already one factor sitting here. So you get S dot square into 1 plus X by R the whole square. Multiplied by QB by P. Okay. Now QB by P, उसमें से QB को ऊपर वैसे ही रखो, 1 by P को you can expand as 1 by P0 into 1 minus delta P by P0. That is this term. And that leaves you with QB by P0. QB by P0 you are expanded as 1 by R minus K. So this is the basic idea of what you will get. Right? And in the y direction you will get something similar. Y direction, by the way, there is no expansion of 1 by P into delta P because there is no, actually you can have it, doesn't matter, have it or not, you will see it won't matter. Okay, let us have it because delta P can be there in both the directions, so it's fine. By the way, there is a minus sign here because of this minus. And y double dot will be plus same S dot square into 1 plus X by R the whole square into 1 minus delta P by P naught into minus K y from this list. Actually, let us not have one more minus and let us keep this with this. Easier, life becomes easier. It doesn't matter, we will see the interpretation for that in a moment, it doesn't matter. Minus K and this. So you got two equations which are not looking anywhere near solved, right? It is looking very horrible. One more step before we can try to simplify this. It is not really layer 4. It is like something totally different. You know that x dot will be equal to is basically dx by dt, na? X dot, which is dx by dt, will be dx by ds into ds by dt. Simple chain rule. Dx by dt is s dot, you know. Dx by ds we are going to call him as x prime. X prime is dx by ds, that is how much deviation do I have from the nominal trajectory per unit, how much displacement I go along the nominal trajectory. So x prime is kind of divergence of the beam. If x prime is higher means इधर थोड़े दूरी में बहुत सारा diverge हो जाता है. X prime is less means traveling a long time along the beam direction, he diverges only slightly. So if we define this quantity called the divergence, which is x prime, then I can write this as x prime into x dot. Okay? And therefore x double dot will be what? X double dot will be x prime dot s dot plus x prime s double dot. X prime dot, again by this logic, will become x double prime into s dot. See, x dot was x prime into s dot, so x prime dot will be x double prime into s dot. There was already this s dot outside, so this will become x prime s dot square plus x double prime s dot square plus x prime s double dot. This is just a extension of chain rule, that's all, nothing more. Now, if I go here and substitute that x double dot is x double prime into s dot square plus x prime s double dot, then basically I can get rid of x double dot in terms of x double prime. Okay. Advantage will be that there will be an s dot square throughout, which will cancel all the s dot square. So the velocity or energy of the beam exits out of the equation, and the equations of motion remain. Let me write this in one side now. Or what do we do? Where do we run the point in those places? Okay, we'll manage. Not a big. ये हो गया ना इधर. देखते, we'll use this space, and if that doesn't make things clear, we'll then turn off the board and rewrite everything. Okay. If I substitute x double prime s dot square over here, this term will become x double prime s dot square plus x prime s double dot, and similarly this term will become y double prime s dot square plus y prime s double dot. What is s double dot? It is the acceleration being experienced by the beam. Now we know that we have already developed the whole concept, built this whole formalism on the idea that there are magnetic fields which are manipulating the beam. We know that magnetic fields alone can never cause any real acceleration of the particles. Therefore, right at this level, we can try to neglect s double dot. Basically, what we are saying is when a beam is stably being transported through the beam, through the beam line, apart from the time when it actually passes through an RF cavity and actually gains acceleration, which is very much intentional, at all other times, there is no real acceleration mechanism, there is only a transport mechanism in the entire accelerator. And therefore, apart from those specific components where the energy suddenly bumps up by certain amount, there is no steady accumulation of energy. In other words, there is no, this may sound very strange sentence, I am saying there is no acceleration in most parts of the accelerator. This is actually true. The acceleration occurs only in the RF station and everywhere else it is just being transported as it is. Okay. So, if we neglect that S double dot term here, we will find that S dot square cancels everywhere. And what you are left with is X double prime minus 1 by R square into 1 plus X by R equal to minus 1 by R into Z by R, all those things. Or Rama and Mahabharata everything. Okay. Similarly, Y double prime is equal to AY into this square. Okay. Now I think we have space enough to do this. Basically, at the end we will have to probably rub these 3 layers, which is fine. Okay. Now basically, let us try to examine all these terms. One thing which you will notice is that everywhere these terms are nearly close to 1 or there is a dominant term everywhere. For example, in this term you have 1 minus delta P by P naught. Delta P by P naught is extremely small. Here you have got 1 plus X by R. X by R is X is what, R is what? R is the radius of curvature, it's a big few meters. And X is on top of that few millimeters here and there, the beam will be there. So X by R is extremely small. Okay. Here 1 by R plus Kx, this was also a Taylor series expansion, we have neglected the higher order term, which means that this is the dominant term, this is the second term which is less dominant. Okay. In mathematical terms. In physical terms, this is the dipole magnet which bends the beam directly. This is the quadrupole which is going to manipulate the beam slightly. The dipole magnet has a very real Lorentz force which acts as a centripetal force. The quadrupole magnet, the magnetic field is perpendicular and the beam when it passes through it gets deflected slightly. So this has a much more serious effect on the beam than this. This is a bending magnet which makes a bulk motion of the beam. This is a focusing magnet which makes a slight change. Next magnet, slight change. Next magnet, slight change, and so on. Okay. So this is smaller than this, much smaller than this. This is much smaller than this. This is much smaller than this. Therefore, basically what you have got is A plus delta A into 1 minus delta into 1 plus delta the whole square. With order A plus delta A into 1 minus delta 2 into 1 plus delta 3 the whole square. All small quantities, what I am calling as delta, they are all small quantities. Here also, 1 minus delta, 1 plus delta 2 the whole square. All these are small quantities. Okay. Keeping that in mind, we can try to multiply out all these brackets. I know it looks like what is going on. 2 brackets here plus 1 here plus 1 here. But when we multiply, we only keep relatively large terms. We will neglect all smaller terms. Smaller terms means wherever 2 deltas are coming together, neglect them. Okay. If you do that, then what will you get from this particular expression and what will you get over here? If you try to do that, you get the following. Let me write down the x double prime equation. X double prime minus 1 by R plus x by R square. We have just minus x. We have just expanded that both these terms in the bracket. 1 by R into 1 and 1 by R into x by R. There was a minus sign already. Okay, here. Right hand side will become, if you are careful about your things, right hand side will become What is the most dominant term? 1 by r into 1 into 1. That is going to be there. So 1 by r plus 1 by r into 1 into this small term. See, take dominant term into small term. Dominant हो गया लिखिए. Okay. By the way, this thing can be written as 1 plus 2x by r plus x square by r square. X square by r square is already a very small term that can be neglected straight away. So this is basically 1 plus 2x by r in terms of the expansion. So you can write this as dominant term into small term, which will be 1 by r into 1 into 2x by r, which will give you. Oh, there is a minus sign here, by the way. Don't forget that. So we get minus 1 by r minus 2x by r square. Then try this dominant and chota term from here. Okay, which will be 1 by r into 1 into delta p by p naught. And there is a minus sign which will cancel, so you will get delta p by r times p naught. Okay. Next क्या होगा? Dominant term and छोटा term, which will be 1 into kx. ठीक है, minus sign, minus kx. ठीक है. And if you look at all these terms, you will find that all other terms in the expansion have at least 2 small terms or 3 small terms or 4 small terms associated with it. So all that we are neglecting. So basically you had a structure which is a plus delta a into b plus delta b into c plus delta c. You have kept the structure as abc plus ab times delta c plus ac times delta b plus bc times delta b. And all other further terms you have neglected. This is the basic idea of what we have done. If it is not clear, the only way to get it clear is write out all the terms and then cancel them. Then fit our diagram. Okay. This is about the x terms. By the way, if you look at this, what do you get? Or what do you see? 1 by r will cancel straight away. And minus 2x by r square and minus x r square. So one of these two will cancel. And the rest of it remains as it is. Is it okay? This is fine. This was the x equation of motion. Now I am very tempted to use this small patch and do the y equation there, or this small or some small patch. So let us do that and then we will rub this and write it out very neatly. Okay. I know that unless you are following this part by part, if you look at the board later on, you will not have a clue what went on because it's jumping all over the place. But I think it's manageable. See, I missed the lecture complex boards here. There are at least twice this size where you could actually write something. Is that so? This is bigger than my home board. My home board is only till here from that end. And I am teaching classical mechanics on that, imagine. Okay. Anyway, this one is simple. Y double prime on the left hand side is equal to on the right hand side क्या होगा? This already small term into dominant term. No other terms will survive because all other terms will have one small term from here plus small term is already here. Okay? So you will end up with the equation that this is equal to ky. That's it. Nothing else. That's all. Okay? So space was enough. You can see that for writing that equation. Now I will rub these 3 layers for the terms and then we will write it down neatly in the final format. Let me repeat this argument which went on here. You have each of these brackets is basically a dominant term plus a small term. So what you are doing is basically you are keeping the terms up to the first small term, means basically dominant into small, or dominant into small, or dominant into small. Means small term from one of the three brackets is there. Wahan tak you are considering the terms. But if you are having a cross term after multiplication in which two small terms from two different brackets are coming in, those are all neglected. Okay. Try doing it. It's fairly straightforward. I am rubbing only this patch where we have these extra things, and we will wrap up with. Of course, then you will not get a snapshot of this, but that is like can't be helped. Alright. So, what is the final equation? Those two equations. Basically, let us write them with their explicit functional dependencies. X double prime as a function of x is equal to minus 1 by r square, which could be a function of s in principle, plus k times x plus 1 over r into delta p by p. The other equation is, okay, let me make it more a function of s, x function of r function. Everywhere very explicitly stated. Okay. Y double prime as a function of s. By the way, what is x double prime? D square x by ds square, and this is d square y by ds square. So it is a it is a substitute quantity for acceleration. What it actually means is that how rapidly the divergence changes as you move along the nominal trajectory. So in that sense, this divergence changes means what? Initially it was diverging, suddenly it converges, how quickly this is happening. Which means that it tells you at how much distance your beam is getting focused and defocused. That is what this quantity measures. Which is what we set out to do, by the way. We wanted to find out how to get the beam to travel in this direction. And this tells you that what all factors can control that change in direction. Okay. This will be plus a of s times that's all. So these equations of motion are called Hill's equations, or I am just going to call it Hill's equation because it's the same equation in both the directions. The x direction is special because there will be an extra delta p by p kind of contribution, change in momentum over the ideal momentum of the particle, and the bending matrix are in bending in the x direction. Therefore, this extra term is there. Otherwise, if you have only quadrupoles and there is no, this term is called the dispersion term, momentum dispersion term. If there is no dispersion and you are only considering quadrupoles, then both the equations are identical. Okay. Now, if you look at this equation, this is something which we will do next time in detail. But before we stop, just a simple thing. What does this equation remind you of? The second thing. The first is complicated looking, it's also the same thing, but the second one is much clearer. If you look at this particular equation, you can think of it in these terms, theta double dot is equal to some constant times theta. If you think of it in that fashion, it is like a simple harmonic kind of equation. Which is what we wanted, no? We wanted that as the beam travels along the accelerator, it should have a kind of converge, divert, photo lattice and whatever we spoke about last time. It seems to be satisfying something like that, which is a good thing. इतना सब करने के बाद अरे उसको हो रहा है, so it's a kind of happy kind of thing. But that is the interpretation with which we will start working from next time. We will assume a particular form of solution because this looks like a harmonic oscillator equation. We will say, let us see if this works out, and then gradually we will build from that and find out how one can obtain solutions to this particular equation. That will be our occupation next time. But basically, what we did today was we introduced a set of coordinates attached to the nominal trajectory and measuring the xy deviation of the actual particle from the nominal. And in terms of those two coordinates x and y, we have obtained two equations which tell us how the divergence changes as you progress along the accelerator. This is more relevant than how it changes with time. You see, x double prime is a more relevant quantity than x double dot. X double dot tells you how much it changes with time. But then you have to compound that with भाई ये कितना speed से जा रहा है and what is happening and what not. Here it is very clear. Accelerator में इतना मीटर चलेगा तो तब तक वो कितना डाइवर्ज या कन्वर्स होता है. ठीक है. So it makes much more sense to deal with this quantity. And so we will be looking at the possible ways to obtain solutions to Hill's equations next time. But for today, we will stop over here. Thank you very much.